The memory of that day still haunted Yao Lu, replaying in her mind as she stood at the gates of the Lu family mansion. The words from that awful confrontation echoed once more. If the nurse hadn't picked up the wrong baby back then, do you think you could have enjoyed so many years as a wealthy young lady? The insult hit her like a punch. Her chest tightened as she recalled the sneering voices taunting her. Your surname is Huo. This is the Lu family, so get lost and go back to the slums you came from. For years, Yao Lu had tried to fit in with the Lu family, but no matter how much she gave, they always saw her as an outsider. After dragging things out for so long, it's about time to leave, one of the family members had said coldly. And now, standing there, the reality of it all was sinking in. Whoa, you really got kicked out? I'm not, she had replied hastily to her friend, who had come to pick her up as soon as they heard the news. I came to pick you up as soon as I heard. Do you know how hard it is to get into this wealthy neighborhood? So, where to? I'll give you a ride. Yao Lu took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. Her plans were clear now. I'm going back to my birth parents' house, she said softly. She had heard the rumors about the Huo family's financial struggles, but she didn't care about the money. As long as they aren't unreasonable like the Lu family, I don't mind helping them out. At the airport, she clutched her ticket and her suitcase, feeling a mix of emotions. Her friend handed her something before leaving. By the way, this is for you. See you never after this. Yao scoffed at the parting gift, her lips curling into a bitter smile. TCH, kicking me to the curb now that I've outlived my usefulness? So ungrateful. She shook her head. See me never after this? A year ago, her entire life had been upended when she mysteriously transmigrated into this body. From then on, she became the poor little Yao Lu, unloved by both her father and mother, merely tolerated by the wealthy Lu family. Our Yao Yao is so smart, her grandmother would always say. Her grandmother, the only person who truly loved her, had become her lifeline in this harsh new reality. But even this love came from an accidental baby switch, a mistake that shaped her entire life. She thought of her grandmother, heart weak and frail. Yao had wanted to stay long enough to help cure her condition, but the Lus couldn't wait to kick her out. It stung to leave without fulfilling that promise. As she waited at the airport pickup point, a familiar voice called out, Yao Yao, have you arrived? She turned toward the sound. I'll meet you at the pickup point, the voice said. She raised an eyebrow in confusion. And you are? She asked, unsure of who she was speaking to. I am your eldest brother, Yinchi Hua, he replied calmly. Yao blinked in surprise. Eldest brother? She hadn't expected him to come personally. Please wait a moment. I'll be out in 5 minutes. As she waited, Yao heard murmurs from passers-by. Is there some celebrity passing through? One person whispered. Another snickered. Poor family background. Idle loafer. And then her brother appeared. Yao froze, eyes widening in shock. Eldest brother Yinchi Hua? A couture suit. The rumors had painted him as an ordinary man, struggling like the rest of the Hua family. But the man in front of her was nothing like she imagined. This is Yinchi Hua, she whispered to herself, taking in his sharp appearance. He doesn't look at all how the rumors described him. Yinchi approached her with a smile. Yao Yao, he asked gently. Yep, she replied, still trying to hide her shock. You look rather different from your photo, he remarked, his eyes scanning her face. Yao bit her lip. This photo really doesn't do her justice, she thought, but outwardly, she shrugged it off. Oh, I'm probably just not very photogenic, she said, trying to keep her cool. Another voice interrupted them. Yinchi, I'm sorry I'm late. I was held up by fans at the airport. Yao turned to see a young woman rushing over, looking somewhat familiar. Yinchi greeted her. It's fine. He turned back to Yao and introduced her. By the way, this is my little sister, Yao Yao. And this is... Before anyone else could speak, Yinchi gestured to the car. I got it. Let's go. This isn't a good place to talk. There are too many people around. As they walked toward the car, Yao heard more whispers. Xia joined a girl group a while back and took part in a talent show, one fan said excitedly. It was supposedly pretty popular, so these are probably her fans. Yao glanced over at the girl group member, wondering how much her life was about to change. I thought this Yao Huo would be some backwater hick, she overheard someone mutter. but now it looks like it won't be easy to deal with her. Yao smirked slightly. They had no idea what she was capable of. As Yao Lu stood outside the Huo family home, she couldn't help but feel a knot of anxiety twisting in her stomach. This was her birth family, yet it felt like stepping into the unknown. She overheard the housekeeper talking to someone on the phone. "Remember to tell finance not to come to the house this month. Our daughter is just returning, and I'm afraid that would scare her." Her nerves only heightened as she heard the faint question from inside the house. Why aren't they here yet? The uncertainty of how this reunion would unfold made her stomach churn. But just as quickly, she heard an excited voice. "Oh, they're here." The door opened, and there stood her parents. Her older brother, Yinshi, stepped forward. "Dad, Mom, we've brought Yao Yao back." The atmosphere was tense as she met the eyes of the family she barely knew. A young woman, her stepsister, huffed, "So what if you're back? I'm the one who's been living with them as family for 17 years. The bitterness in her voice was unmistakable, and Yao Lu felt the sting of being the intruder in a life she hadn't asked for. Yao's father stepped forward with a smile, ignoring the tension. "Thank you for taking the trouble to go pick Yao Yao up," he said to Yinshi. "It's getting late. I'll ask Yinshi to take you home. Otherwise, your real parents might get upset again when they learn you've come to our house," he added, addressing Yao's stepsister. Her mother, though reserved, offered a gentle smile. "Yao Yao, come inside. The food is ready." Yao Lu didn't expect much from her new family, but her mother's calm demeanor surprised her. Even though I wasn't expecting much, she thought, Mama's attitude is different. Inside, her mother seemed eager to make Yao feel at home. "I've also prepared for you some things," she began, leading Yao to a painting displayed prominently on the wall. Yao's eyes widened in shock. "Isn't this that painting that has appreciated to an astronomical price?" But then doubt crept in. "It must be a high-quality imitation," she reasoned. "Although the Huas aren't destitute, they still probably can't afford to buy the real work of a famous artist like this." Her father, noticing her interest, asked, "You like calligraphy too, Yao Yao?" He was quickly interrupted by her stepbrother, Jean, who was more than eager to boast. "Enough, Jean Yin," her father interrupted with a dismissive wave. "Stop showing off your lousy works. Come, Yao Yao, let me show you to your room." As they moved through the house, Yao overheard Jean muttering, "Why are all antiques just junk in your eyes? This work is clearly—" But his words faded as they reached her new room. "This room used to be Xiang's," her father explained. "But he likes to wander, so he's hardly ever home. I decided to just redecorate this room of his for you. Take a look and see if you like it." Yao walked in, the decor taking her by surprise. "Thanks," she mumbled, though my eyes hurt from all the pink. The room was drenched in pastel colors, with frilly curtains and ornate furniture that looked more suited to a princess than a girl like Yao. Her mother beamed proudly. "This is a design I asked a famous interior designer to come up with. What do you think? Isn't it very girly and dreamy?" she added excitedly. "Besides that, these are all new clothes I bought. See if you like them. If you don't, we can go buy another batch." Yao's jaw nearly dropped. "Another batch? Mom, does our family own a gold mine?" she thought incredulously. But before she could say anything, her mother's eyes filled with tears. "Wah! My darling daughter, you finally called me Mom." The joy in her voice was unmistakable, and Yao Lu couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt. After dinner, Yao presented her new school admission letter. "This should set your minds at ease," she said, handing over the brochure. "See, I'll be transferring to First Central High School." She noticed their surprised expressions. "As for these other schools you've chosen, I won't need them." Her father and mother exchanged glances. It's clear to see that they were carefully selecting a school for me, Yao thought, and were also sincerely worried about my grades. But Yao Lu knew she was more than capable of handling her academic future. "If there's nothing else," she said, standing up, "I'll be going back to my room now. Good night." As she left, her parents whispered amongst themselves. "Jinyan, why does our daughter have a transfer acceptance letter from First Central?" Her mother asked in disbelief. "Look at the stamp on it. Could it be fake?" Her father shook his head. "It's unlikely to be fake. But considering First Central standards, could Yao Yao have gotten in with her grades? Didn't Xia say she only managed to get in her last school by paying? And now this First Central is the best school in the city. Yao's father sighed. Don't overthink it. You should have faith in your own daughter. He leaned back, a small smile creeping onto his face. This daughter is likely far more capable than we expected. Down the hall, Yao smiled to herself as she entered her room. They do have faith in me, she thought, her heart warming for the first time in what felt like ages. It's been a long time since I've felt so relaxed. As she settled in, her stepbrother's voice carried down the hall. You were sniffing the scent pills Yao Yao gave you earlier. Do they really work for your migraine? They do, her father exclaimed. It's been a long time since I've felt so relaxed. If you don't believe me, why don't you try the great tonic pills Yao Yao gave you? Yao Lu couldn't help but chuckle softly to herself as she drifted off to sleep. Yao Huo stood in her new room, staring out the window. She thought about how strange everything felt. Being back with her birth family after so many years, a new home, new expectations. Deep down, she knew one thing for sure. Even if she told the truth about what happened to her, about transmigrating into this world, no one would believe her. It was far too unbelievable. I'm back, Yao said quietly, announcing her presence as she entered the living room after a workout. Her stepmother, Lisa, looked up from her magazine. You're back from your workout? Take a break, Lisa said, nodding toward the couch. Yao could tell she was trying to be warm, but there was always a layer of awkwardness between them. Oh, by the way, there's a delivery for you, Lisa added, pointing to a large package sitting by the door. No idea what it is, but it's pretty heavy. Yao's eyes fell on the box. That must be the supplies I ordered, she thought. With a sigh, she walked over to it, lifting it carefully. My poor waist, she groaned internally. It was filled with odds and ends, things she needed to make her own medicine. Now that I have this, it'll be much easier. I'm heading up to shower, Yao said after placing the box in her room. She needed a moment alone. Too many thoughts were buzzing in her head, especially about her older brother, Huo. Jinyan, her stepbrother, poked his head into the living room. Jinyan, looks like you really need to take that bottle of supplements Yao Yao gave you, Lisa joked. Jinyan rolled his eyes. It's not me. That box was really heavy. But Yao was only half listening. Why is Yinchi here today? She wondered. Aside from the day he picked her up from the airport, Yinchi hadn't come home once. Has he been busy, or does he just not want to accept me as a sister? The thought stung more than she wanted to admit. During dinner, Yinchi broke the silence. Yao Yao, Mom said you're transferring into First Central High School? Yep, Yao replied, not looking up from her plate. I'll be enrolling tomorrow. Yinchi hesitated for a moment before offering. Then, I'll take you to the school tomorrow. His voice was casual, but Yao could sense the underlying awkwardness. Yinchi continued, Xia is studying at First Central too. I promised to take her on the first day of school. You're not familiar with First Central, so with Xia there too, you'll... No thanks, Yao interrupted, standing up abruptly. I can go on my own? Her voice was firmer than intended, and the room fell silent. Mom, Dad, I'm full. I'll be going upstairs, she added before anyone could protest. Yinchi looked after her, confused. Is she throwing a tantrum because she heard I'll be taking Xia too? He sighed. Has she been like this the whole time since coming back? His father shook his head. You shouldn't spoil her too much, Yinchi said quietly to Lisa, as if trying to make sense of Yao's behavior. Lisa frowned. Yao Yao has a very good temper. Stop being so prejudiced against her. Yinchi stood, feeling out of place. Okay, my bad. I shouldn't have come back tonight. I'll go. He pulled out his phone as he walked out the door. Hello, Xia, he muttered, leaving the house. Later that night, Yinchi confided in Xia. Yao Yao's grades aren't good enough to get her into First Central. I don't know how she managed to get that letter of acceptance to transfer in, but she's determined. So, Xia, I can only ask you to help take care of her at school. Don't worry, Yinchi, Xia replied sweetly. I'll make sure to take good care of Yao Yao. Yinchi sighed with relief. And as long as that transfer letter was obtained legitimately, it doesn't matter who helped her out. Xia's voice chimed in again. Don't forget your promise, Yinchi. Remember to come pick me up and take me to school tomorrow. Yinchi forced a smile. I won't forget, he promised, though his mind was elsewhere. Upstairs, Yao sat in her room, packing her bag for the next day. She could hear her stepbrother's voice echoing in her head. Mom, I just heard from Yinchi that Yao will be studying at First Central. Didn't you say her grades were bad? Did you or Dad find someone to help her out? She shook off the thought. I'll prove them all wrong, she told herself. She wasn't worried about grades. After all, she had far more pressing concerns, like making sure her mother fully recovered with the medicine she prepared. These pills should be enough for Mom, she reassured herself. Now I can report to the school without worrying. The next morning, as Yao prepared to leave, Lisa stopped her. Yao, this is my gift for your start at a new school, she said, handing Yao a sleek black card. The passcode is your birthday, and there are no limits on it, so feel free to swipe as you like. Yao stared at the card in disbelief. You have a black card in your hand, and you're telling me to swipe as I like. What kind of poor family is this? She chuckled inwardly, tucking the card into her bag. At First Central, Yao stood in front of the school gates, waiting. She hadn't received her student card yet, so she showed the black card at the entrance. Miss, you have to swipe your card to enter the school. You can't go in without it, the security guard informed her. I'm a transfer student, so I don't have my student card yet. Will this do? Yao asked, holding up the black card. The guard looked hesitant. Wait here for now. I have to check with the academic affairs office. Yao sighed. Do I have to keep waiting here until he comes out? She glanced around, wondering how long this would take. Do you have the contact number for the office or the principal? The guard frowned. My colleague might not have his phone on him, and no one's picking up even though I called several times. This is going to be a long morning, Yao thought, trying to stay patient. Yinchi was stood by the entrance of First Central High, watching as Xia hopped out of his car with a bright smile. She waved goodbye. Thank you for bringing me to school today, Yinchi. She gave him a quick, sweet smile and headed toward the school building. But Yinchi wasn't focused on Xia's departure. His attention had drifted elsewhere. He blinked, squinting as he saw a familiar figure. Yao Huo, his foster sister, getting into a stranger's car just outside the school gate. What's wrong? Xia asked, noticing his distraction. Yinchi frowned. I must have seen wrong. How could Yao be entering the school in a stranger's car? He stared after the vehicle, a sinking feeling forming in his stomach. Nothing's going to happen, right? Meanwhile, Yao sat quietly in the sleek car. The man beside her, a neighbor who seemed to keep appearing in her life lately, glanced at her with a smirk. What a coincidence, Mr. Neighbor, Yao muttered sarcastically. Why are you here at First Central? And you can drive right into the school? Don't tell me you're a teacher. He chuckled, shaking his head. Do I look like a teacher? He teased, leaning slightly toward her. Yao rolled her eyes. Nope. No school would dare hire a teacher with such good looks. That would just be asking for their students to be distracted from their studies. They stopped at the entrance. Please stop here. I'll go in by myself, Yao said as she gathered her things, eager to escape the uncomfortable atmosphere. The man smirked. So heartless. Aren't you even a little curious about who I am? But Yao ignored his question, stepping out of the car and walking towards the school. As she made her way inside, she overheard snippets of gossip from other students. Hey, have you heard? A new senior year student is transferring in today, one student whispered to another. Transferring in as a senior? Will they be able to keep up? The other responded with skepticism. Oh, didn't you know? Rumor has it that the student scored full marks on the transfer exam. Yao's ears perked up at that. Full marks? Is that what they're saying about me? She thought, both amused and indifferent. Inside the school, not everyone was as welcoming. In the dean's office, Mingzhi Wei, the homeroom teacher of the prestigious senior year Class 1, was deep in discussion with the dean. Dean, I think it's better for you to arrange for Miss Yao Huo to go to another class. Our honors class is already full. I'm afraid adding another student would affect the others, and Miss Huo may not be able to keep up. The dean frowned. But Miss Huo scored perfectly on her exam. Surely that proves she's capable. Mingzhi shook his head firmly. Yao Huo's grades haven't been good in the past. Even though she's not my biological child, I wouldn't want to see her get off track. I don't know how she got her admission letter, but as long as she stays out of trouble, just stick her in the regular class. The dean sighed, frustrated. Wei, will you reconsider? Miss Hua is the principal's. Before he could finish, the door creaked open and Yao herself walked in, her expression neutral. She had overheard enough. Dean, since this teacher is unwilling, it's all the same to me if I go to another class, she said coolly. It makes little difference to me where I study anyway. Mingzhi glanced at her, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. Just look at her attitude. So arrogant. The dean gave Mingzhi one final chance. I'll ask you one last time. You really won't take her in? There must be something fishy behind her perfect test score, Mingzhi snapped. I won't let her into my class. The dean shook his head in disappointment. Fine then. I hope you won't regret this in the future. Mingzhi stood firm. I'm sure I won't. Not long after, Yao found herself in senior year class 3 under the care of homeroom teacher Yu Chen. As she stepped into the classroom, whispers immediately started flying. Have you seen the new transfer student? Someone whispered. She's so pretty. Another chimed in. Even her handwriting is lovely. My heart skipped a beat. A boy declared loudly. I've decided. She will be my goddess from now on. Yao could hear their admiration, but kept her head high as she introduced herself to the class. Hello, everyone. My name is Yao Huo. Meanwhile, in senior year class 1, Ying Chang leaned over to Xia, who had also been listening to the rumors. Look, that's the new transfer student in class 3. She's so pretty. Xia Lu has a rival now. Things are about to get exciting. Xia, usually calm and composed, felt a strange unease. Don't say anything like that anymore, Ying, she muttered. Although Yao came from a remote county, it's true that she's attractive. Ying's eyes widened. Wait, so you know that transfer student, Xia? She's from the countryside. Xia nodded reluctantly. Well, I guess I sort of know her. She's the foster daughter of my family, the Lus. Ying gasped. So she's that fake who's been hogging your true identity for years? Xia lowered her voice. Quiet down. Please don't tell anyone about this. After all, Yao Huo is innocent in this matter too. But Ying wasn't convinced. You're being too kind. If it weren't for her, you wouldn't have had to live in a poor family for so many years. Ying's eyes darkened. She'd better pray I don't catch her doing anything wrong, or I won't take it easy on her. As Xia's mind spun, she whispered to herself, Don't worry, Yao Huo. I'll make sure you have an unforgettable time in high school. Yao Huo sat on the bench outside the school, her mind still replaying the day's events. The sound of a familiar voice startled her. It's me. Look up. Her eyes flickered upward, and there he was, the neighbor from the countryside, a face she didn't expect to see again so soon. We meet again, he said with a small smirk. She sighed and reached for her phone. I'll check in with my mom through text first, she muttered, trying to regain some semblance of control over the situation. As she typed, a nagging question tugged at her. How did you get my number? His casual response made her stomach churn. Your grandma asked me to take care of you. At the mention of her grandma, Yao's expression softened. Grandma, is she doing well? She asked, hoping for some good news. But the man's response crushed her hopes. Maybe it's because you're no longer around, but she isn't in high spirits like she used to be. Your foster mom has brought her here, though. So if you'd like to see her, you can go over any time. Yao's heart ached. Guilt crept in. If only I had stayed longer, she thought. She had never wanted to leave her grandma behind, but life had a cruel way of pulling people apart. She swallowed her emotions and changed the subject. I heard you were stopped at the gates of First Central this morning, the man said, breaking her train of thought. And a guard took your admission letter away. Yao's face flushed at the memory. Yeah, it was a mix-up, she mumbled. Apparently, the guard had an upset stomach and didn't have his cell phone on him. That's why everything got delayed. He shrugged casually. The dean told me to tell you not to worry about this. Just focus on your studies here at First Central. It's just some petty people up to no good. Yao didn't respond. She was used to people like that. In her world, it always felt like there were those who didn't want her to succeed. But she had learned long ago not to let it get under her skin. She stood, ready to leave. As she turned, the man called out after her with a teasing grin. It's not cute at all for a young girl to act so jaded and mature. Yao shot him a glare. Get lost, she snapped before walking away. When Yao got home later that evening, she was greeted warmly by her foster mother. Yao Yao, you're back. How was your first day at school? Did you have any trouble adjusting? It went fine, Yao answered, her voice steady, though her mind was still clouded by the strange events of the day. Is there something you wanted to tell me? Her foster mother hesitated. Ahem, it's nothing. I just wanted to ask you. Who was the friend you were having dinner with tonight? Was it a classmate? Boy or girl? Yao looked at her, surprised by the sudden concern. Not a classmate. He's a boy, and we were neighbors back when I was living with Grandma in the countryside. I helped him before, so he wanted to treat me to a meal since we happened to meet today. Her foster mother nodded, her worry easing a bit. So that's how it is. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to interfere with your friendships. I'm just worried about your safety being out so late as a girl. I know, Mom. Yao replied softly, her expression softening. You must be tired after a long day of classes. Hurry up and take a shower, and turn in earlier, her foster mother said, patting her on the arm. Okay. Yao went to her room, grateful for the concern, but mentally exhausted from the day. Meanwhile, downstairs, Yao's foster father sighed, leaning back in his chair. Darn Yanxi, he muttered, rubbing his temples. If he hadn't called today to ask me to keep an eye on who Yao Yao is hanging out with, I wouldn't have misunderstood. Luckily, Yao didn't get mad. His wife smiled softly. Yanxi was just worried. Yao Yao just returned, so they don't know each other well enough yet. There's bound to be some misunderstandings. Give it some time. He nodded. Sigh. I guess that's all we can do. That weekend, Yao visited her grandma at her foster parents' home. The moment she stepped through the door, the comforting smell of home-cooked food filled the air. Yao Yao, I prepared your favorite ribs today, as well as some yellowtail fish, her grandma said with a warm smile. Yao's heart swelled with affection. I've really missed your cooking, Grandma, so I'll be sure to eat 2 extra bowls of rice today, she said, trying to sound cheerful despite the worry gnawing at her heart. Yumin was right. She thought as she looked at her grandmother's frail figure. Grandma's condition has gotten worse since I left. It didn't make sense. Yao had left her special medicines and incense to help her sleep. If those had been used properly, her grandma's health shouldn't have deteriorated. A dark thought crossed her mind. This definitely has something to do with the Liu family. As she was deep in thought, her foster mother called from the kitchen. Yao Yao, go get the door. It's probably the water delivery people. Okay, Yao replied, heading for the door. But when she opened it, her heart skipped a beat. Standing on the porch was the last person she expected to see. What are you doing here? The atmosphere in the house was already tense when Yao Huo arrived. Her grandmother sat quietly in the corner, while her foster mother, Evelyn, fussed over a delicate jade jewelry set. Grandma, Mom bought this set of jade jewelry especially for you, Evelyn said, her voice laced with pride as she placed the box on the table. Yao's grandmother gave a soft sigh, her frail hands resting on her lap. If I had known they were coming, I wouldn't have asked Yao Yao to come. I'm too old for things like this, she said, shaking her head. Yao Yao, do you want to take a look? Maybe you'd like it, or you could take it back for your mom. The comment seemed innocent enough, but Evelyn's expression hardened, her patience thinning. Have you lost it, Mother? Do you know how much this jade set costs? She was exasperated, her voice rising. Aren't you giving it to me? Then it's up to me what I decide to do with it. Yao sensed the growing tension, her heart sinking as she watched the scene unfold. Her grandmother's soft, dismissive tone had triggered something in Evelyn, and now the whole room felt charged with an uncomfortable energy. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. So that's your aim, she spat, her tone accusatory. To take advantage of the kindness of an old lady for her riches. If you want money, just say it. Are you having fun bothering her? How much do you want? 100,000? 200? Her voice dripped with disdain as she continued. 300,000 should be enough for your whole family to live off for a few years, right? Yao could hardly believe what she was hearing. Does she really think that's what this is about? She thought, trying to process Evelyn's sudden hostility. Her grandmother, though taken aback, chuckled softly. Xiaoman, how can you say that? She asked, shaking her head. Yao smirked, finding some twisted humor in Evelyn's outrageous accusation. What are you laughing about? Evelyn snapped, glaring at her. Only 300,000? Yao said, raising an eyebrow, sarcasm dripping from her words. You talk so seriously that I thought you were going to offer me 30 million. Her grandmother let out another soft chuckle, though her voice remained steady. Not even 30 million? I would have been too embarrassed to say what you just did. Awkward. Evelyn's face flushed with anger and frustration, but Yao's expression remained calm. She turned to her grandmother, giving her a soft smile. Grandma, looks like I won't be able to spend the weekend with you after all. Her grandmother blinked, confused. Why, Yao Yao? Yao's expression darkened slightly. Someone is secretly looking for you, Shangguan, she muttered, her tone cryptic but filled with meaning. Later that evening, Yao returned home. She pushed open the door, calling out, Dad, Mom, I'm home. Her foster mother appeared from the kitchen, surprised. Yao Yao, why are you back so soon? Didn't you say you were going to Madame Yang's to see her? She had some guests over, so I came back early, Yao explained. I haven't eaten lunch yet. I'll grab something. Evelyn quickly shifted into mom mode, her earlier frustrations forgotten. You haven't eaten? I'll make you some food. She glanced at Yao's foster father, Jinyan, and added, Move these things back to the room. I'll go cook. Jinyan nodded, but as Yao watched him, a nagging feeling crept into her chest. Something wasn't right. She hesitated for a moment before blurting out, Mom, we're not in debt, are we? Both of her foster parents froze. Jinyan's eyes flicked toward Evelyn, and Yao felt her pulse quicken. Why are they reacting like that? Not at all, Evelyn quickly answered, her voice a little too bright, a little too quick. Why do you ask? Yao crossed her arms, her brow furrowing. Oh, when I came back earlier, I saw some men dressed in black suits in front of the house. They looked fierce and unfriendly, kind of like those professional debt collectors in the mafia. She gave him a questioning look. They didn't look like the decent kind. Jinyan's face paled. He exchanged a panicked glance with Evelyn, who tried to remain calm, but her voice betrayed her worry. Maybe someone nearby borrowed money from a loan shark, she said, her words stumbling slightly. Next time you run into someone like that, make sure to avoid them. Loan sharks? Yao thought. That's a pretty weak explanation. She didn't press further, but doubt gnawed at her. Were they hiding something? As she left the room, Jinyan grabbed Evelyn's arm, his voice trembling. Big trouble, he whispered frantically. Our daughter thinks we're deeply in debt. Evelyn could only sigh, her hands trembling as she tried to figure out how to keep Yao from discovering the truth. Yao Huo was sitting at her desk when her phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with a text from her foster dad, Jinyan. She sighed, half expecting another message full of unwarranted concern. But what popped up next took her by surprise. Yao Yao, this is your allowance from me. Accept it, the message read, followed by a transfer notification. $10,000 transferred to you. Another text quickly followed. Yao Yao, here are your living expenses for next week. Use it. Hearts and kisses, love you. Yao blinked in disbelief, staring at the numbers on her phone. What's gone into these two now? She thought, her fingers hesitating over the screen. Meanwhile, Jinyan, sitting across the room from Evelyn, seemed pleased with himself. From now on, I'll transfer $10,000 every day for Yao Yao's living expenses, he announced, his voice full of pride. This will avoid any misunderstandings in the future, right? And it'll also bring us closer. Evelyn simply nodded, suppressing a sigh. Yep, that's his brilliant plan, she thought, unable to hide her bemusement at Jinyan's sudden generosity. Later, Yao received another unexpected message. Hey, are you free? Help me deliver something. It was from an old acquaintance, someone she hadn't heard from in a while. They followed up almost immediately. Please help me deliver this to my grandma. I can't go over there. Yao raised an eyebrow, wondering what was behind the urgency. Your foster mom won't let you, she typed back, teasing. Those who don't know better might think you have surveillance on me, came the reply, with an air of frustration. Anyway, I'll leave it to you. I'll buy you dinner someday. Yao chuckled to herself. Is this my usual cold and aloof master? She thought with amusement. I can't believe he's being this casual. As she got up to leave, she noticed the intricate pattern on a delivery envelope in her hand, something strangely familiar. Where have I seen this before? Back at school, Yao's desk mate, Ing Ming, burst into the classroom, her face flushed with anger. "I'm so mad," she fumed, slamming her books down. Yao looked up lazily. "What's wrong?" "Someone's been spreading rumors that you have bad grades and only got into this school through a back door," Ing Ming practically shouted, her hands gripping the desk. "I'm your desk mate. How could I not know that you're a total nerd who reads all day? Why would you need a back door?" Yao smiled at Ing Ming's passionate defense. What a simple child, she thought. "Rumors stop with the wise," Yao said calmly. Ing Ming huffed. "That's true, but the rumors are getting so bad it could be trouble if the principal hears about it. We need to find a way to clear your name." Yao sighed, barely interested. She had heard worse before. "Oh." Ing Ming perked up, suddenly remembering something. "There was an announcement last week about a national knowledge quiz. It goes from city preliminaries to provincial, and then national levels. The top 3 will represent the country in international competitions. If you make it through the city preliminaries, it would prove your ability. You should take part in that." Yao slumped in her chair, entirely uninterested. "Boring." "Not interested?" Ing Ming pouted dramatically. "How can I save you from your lazy bones, deskmate?" Yao's phone buzzed again. Another transfer. Damn it, she thought, rolling her eyes. "I want to have rich parents too." Ing Ming caught a glimpse of Yao's screen and sighed enviously. "Deskmate, I envy you so much." Yao barely paid attention, her thoughts wandering. "Are you really that interested in the national knowledge competition?" she thought. A few days later, Yao found herself cornered by Miss Chun, one of the teachers. Miss Chun looked at her with a mixture of concern and curiosity. "I normally wouldn't recommend you participate in this kind of competition, since you just transferred. But since you've already signed up, I'll respect your choice. You'll have to promise not to fall behind on your schoolwork, though." Yao raised an eyebrow, caught off guard. "Did Ing Ming sign me up?" Miss Chun looked puzzled. "How much is the prize money for winning first place in this competition?" Yao asked, more curious than she let on. Miss Chun blinked in surprise. There isn't any prize money," she said hesitantly. "However, there's a chance to get a guaranteed spot at a top university. And if you win an international award, your future will be very bright." Yao's interest deflated. "I see," she thought. "Miss, if there's nothing else, I'll go back to the classroom." As Yao walked away, Miss Chin shook her head. "Why do I get the feeling she's competing not for the guaranteed spot, but for the prize money?" She wondered. "I must be losing it." Rumors began swirling around the school soon after. Students from other classes whispered about Yao. That transfer student from Class 3, who came in through a back door, actually signed up for the national knowledge competition, one girl sneered. "Don't tell me she thinks she can use a back door for the competition too," another boy muttered, shaking his head. The participant list had been posted, and Yao's name was right there, in bold letters. Senior year Class 3. "Oh my God, our school is about to lose face on the national level," one girl said dramatically, rolling her eyes. Yao overheard bits of the gossip, but couldn't care less. "Why couldn't they just let me sit still like the pretty flower vase they think I am?" she thought dryly. Ing Ming, ever the energetic deskmate, waved at her excitedly. "Richie Yao, didn't you say you weren't interested in the competition? You refused when I told you to sign up." Yao gave her a blank stare. Ever since Ing Ming found out about the transfers, she'd taken to calling her Richie Yao. Just Rich Yao would probably sound better. Yao thought. "I didn't," Yao replied. "Even though I hoped you'd join, I still needed you to agree first," Ing Ming said, a bit confused. "Didn't you sign up for it?" Yao frowned, glancing at the list again. "Then who signed me up?" Yao sat quietly at her desk, lost in her thoughts. The gossip about her had taken on a life of its own. "Everyone thinks I have bad grades now, huh?" She mused, her mind wandering to the whispers she had heard in the hallways. Her desk mate, Madison Maddie Bell, wasn't one to let things slide. She leaned in closer, her brow furrowed in concern. "Richie Yao, have you offended anyone recently? I mean, could someone be trying to screw you over on purpose? It seems like someone's out to make you look like a fool." Yao looked up, smirking slightly. "Do those who envy my good looks count?" she replied, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Maddie sighed in exasperation. "Please be serious, Yao. I can't help you figure this out if you're joking around like this. Meanwhile, across campus, a different conversation was unfolding. Shuev Xiaoxiao Lu sat with her friends, her lips pursed as she heard the latest rumors about Yao. She glanced at her friend, Vivian, who seemed eager to stir the pot. Do you know how conceited Yao Huo is? Vivian asked, rolling her eyes. I have no idea where she gets the confidence to sign up for the national knowledge competition. Xiaoxiao pretended to focus on her phone, but a small smile tugged at her lips. The rumors say she got into First Central through a back door, Vivian continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. She's got some nerve to sign up with her grades. Everyone's just waiting for her to fail. Xiaoxiao's eyes flickered with amusement, but she quickly suppressed it. Vivian, were you the one who let it slip that Yao got in through a back door? Vivian paled, shaking her head quickly. Oh, of course it wasn't me. I would never. Xiaoxiao nodded thoughtfully. All right then. Yao's still my sister in a way, even if she can't study. I don't want people making fun of her. Besides, I have my own exams to focus on. Vivian nodded, though it was clear her attention was still on the gossip. After school, Maddie rushed up to Yao. Richie Yao, let me tell you something, she began, her voice excited. Xiaoxiao's brother, Yinshi, is coming to pick her up today. She wants us to leave together later. Yao raised an eyebrow. Yinshi? Leave together? She asked, her tone filled with disbelief. Richie Yao actually knows the campus celebrity, someone whispered from across the room, clearly impressed. Yao shook her head. Pass. I'll be taking the bus, she replied, waving off the offer. Maddie followed behind, still chatting. Richie Yao, wait for me. This is the first time I've seen someone not fall for the Campus Bells act. It's kind of refreshing. Just as Yao was about to walk away, she noticed Yinshi approaching from his morning run. He gave her a look, his expression unreadable. You are, Yao began, unsure why he seemed to be staring at her. I'm going back to my room now, Yinshi said, brushing past her. But something about the interaction lingered in Yao's mind. This brother of mine, she thought, shaking her head. He's not what I expected. Later that day, Yao was caught off guard again when Yinshi approached her. His expression was serious, as if something had been weighing on his mind. Xiaxia told me you signed up for the national knowledge competition, he said, his eyes searching her face for a reaction. Yao raised an eyebrow. Did you ask Xiaolu the same question? How did she reply? Yinshi hesitated, glancing away. The two of you are different, he said, choosing his words carefully. Xiaxia is doing it for the guaranteed spot at QU, but you, with your grades, there isn't much point in you participating. Yao's expression hardened. So, you're saying I'm not qualified to join the competition? Is that it? Her voice was calm, but there was a sharp edge to it. Yinshi shook his head. That's not what I meant. I just think you should focus on your studies. Don't get carried away by distractions. Yao could feel her patience wearing thin, but she kept her face neutral. Why is everyone so convinced my grades are terrible? She wondered. Yinshi, sensing the tension, sighed. I might have gone too far, he admitted. The internet says little sisters need to be treated with care. Maybe I should let this go. It's just a competition after all. He paused, as if reconsidering his words. How about I find you a tutor, he offered. I have a friend at the Cultural Education Association who could help you catch up. It could make a real difference. Yao crossed her arms, her tone icy. No thanks. I don't need a tutor. Yinshi frowned, clearly frustrated. You don't understand how much it helps to be mentored by someone from the Cultural Education Association. He pressed, but Yao wasn't budging. Why on earth is he so convinced I need tutoring? Yao thought, growing more irritated by the second. But she could see the conversation was going nowhere, so she sighed. Never mind then. I don't know why I said all this, Yinshi muttered, throwing his hands up in defeat. Since you refuse, just pretend I didn't say anything. Yao watched him walk away, her mind spinning. Everyone's underestimating me. She thought, a fire starting to burn inside her. But I'll show them, one way or another.